Hello and welcome to the Shepheard-Walwyn podcast series. My name is Jonathan Brown. Shepheard-Walwyn is a campaigning book publisher based in London, England. Our purpose is to uncover and promote new ideas to society's oldest problems. And whilst our specialty is ethical economics, something Anthony Werner, our driving force for over 40 years, has pioneered, we have branched out over the years to other related areas such as the environment and the lives and works of society's change agents. These podcasts promote ideas we're convinced can actually help us build a better society for all of us. So have a listen and be sure to share with your friends if you like them, but also tell us what you think. These are debates we all need to be part of. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Welcome back to the final part of this three-part podcast series with economist and investor Phil Anderson. Now, just a quick recap, Phil wrote The Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking in 2008, which has documented the boom-bust cycles that happen with alarming regularity in US land and property values, and has done for the last 250 years. Now, Phil's a very popular speaker and is also the founder of Property Sharemarket Economics, a subscription service for investors looking for advice on global market movements. Now, in this podcast, we look to the future, building on what we've studied already, and we look at what we can predict is likely to happen based on our understanding of the past. Welcome back, Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan.
So
Glad to be back.
The last part of our conversation was taking us up to the present, and we were talking about NFTs and
Yes.
the current. And you made a link between Chicago speculation, land speculation, and also NFTs as well. It's like this has happened before, which is one of the key points of your book. Now we're going to talk about part 3 of the book, which is entitled "The Future," and you quote one of your the people that you've studied most, I guess, next to the property cycle and land values, WD Gann, which is, "There is no new thing under the sun, but that we simply resurrect the old ones. How do I forecast future cycles, you may ask? In order to forecast future cycles, the most important thing is to begin right. For if we have the right beginning, we will get the right ending." You talk in the book about knowledge we've gained along the way, and you talk about the key investment finding. So I wonder if you'd take us through what that is.
Well, I can expand on that even a bit more. Owning of real estate is a government-granted licence, effectively. It is government-granted in the end. And everybody who lives in the society, we agree that government can be the ultimate controller. I learnt that, as a rule, the speculators, if they lived a life of speculation, they got slaughtered in the finish, because they all would, if they did well, they all thought they were a genius. They thought they were genius. They thought they made money because they were the genius behind the money making, when in effect their boat was just lifting with everybody else's as real estate prices continued to go up and the stock market prices continued to go up. If you're on the long side, that's the buying side, it can hardly help but not lose. The people that were just speculating and more into the speculation, they got slaughtered in the finish. But what I learned following all of the cycles is that there were consistently a few people that bobbed up, seemed to come up every cycle, and they were the people that actually ran profitable businesses and then put the surplus profits into real estate and didn't speculate. So they were looking at long-term returns, and some of those families are still with us. You're talking generations then, and whether the children give it away or not, or learn the lessons, is not for me to say. But generally, after about 14 years up of the real estate cycle, everybody speculating at the finish. The downturn wiped out the speculators. That's what you could see, and I can see that happening again as we move into the middle part of this decade, once we get to the peak, and then after that the speculators will again be wiped out. Yes, so the lesson there is either know when to get out, which I'm not sure anybody really learns, or build your business on a profitable, on a good, reasonable profit building, on profit as such, on a profit that stands up in good and bad times. prepare for the down times in the good times, and don't speculate with your profits, and don't get into a business you don't know. That's what I learned. I think that's part of the knowledge that I gained along the way. I just tried to put it in a reasonable written form.
And you mentioned in the chapter of Why They Repeat the largely forgotten economist of David Ricardo.
Oh yes.
And I studied economics at university, and I only learnt about Ricardo when I went to Japan, and they actually studied Ricardo quite a lot.
Do they?
They did. This is back in the 1990s, and so I actually sat through and stayed awake in my economics lectures when literally nearly all my friends were asleep.
Yeah.
Because the philosophy in Japan, as long as you're present, then that's okay. So it's okay to sleep in lectures.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because when I studied Nikolai Kondratiev and his contemporaries in Russia, we're talking 1925. It was the Russian economists that actually understood the capitalist economy better than the economists within America.
Right.
They had good knowledge of commodity prices and the cycles. They knew things went up and down, and could actually suggest why this might be the case. So it's rather ironic, really, that the Japanese economists, the Japanese lecturers might do that. Yeah, Ricardo was. Ricardo's famous for his theory of comparative advantage.
Yeah.
But he spent, which essentially is saying that trading nations generally do better than non-trading nations. Trading nations, you specialise in what you can do, and then use the funds and the ability and the profits from all that to buy in what you can't make. And generally that will create a better society, because you end up with cheaper products with higher wages. That's comparative advantage.
So I came across a paper written by Keane, the economist that you got me onto, basically saying that was essentially a con. That the whole thing around comparative advantage was made up by a scam artist, and then I don't know if that was true. I don't know if it was a parody of a parody.
Jonathan, I've not seen that myself, but there's no economist that will basically argue against what Ricardo had to say there. It's been proven correct. Ricardo wrote in the times of the Corn Laws, and the Corn Laws were designed to protect the landowners and keep prices high. Yes, whereas it was much better for the workers to introduce to bring in things from overseas that made prices cheaper, while the English could specialise in what they did best.
So the section that we're talking about now, the future section, I think for me when I take it, it's actually, so it looks like quite a short section, because we're very quickly, you have I think you have like 60-70 pages of an appendix, right?
Yes.
And not just, your references are pretty long, but they're introduced by each chapter. So what you actually have is the future. And the future starts to this. The part 3 summarizes the learning of the previous 320 pages. And if I think one of the benefits of the way that it's written is you just introduce each cycle with such regularity, and and the structures throughout each of the chapters, and it finishes with the scams, which is always the funniest and also the scariest bit as well.
Yeah. But
you also, in the future, you also say, right, what are the lessons? Right, and looking at all this history, this 200 plus year history of the cycle, which I know officially is America, but it's a lens for the whole thing. Yes. You actually then have really 100 pages of knowledge we gained along the way. You've also got the whole thing about the reliability of the cycle. Why 18 years?
Yes. Well, I have to say that because
what time is it as well? Which I guess is the most. What time is it, and help telling the time. I mean, where are we in the cycle?
Yeah.
And also, how can you verify it? And I think that's one of the things that's most useful for people. And having seen you present a lot now, there's this whole thing. It's like, guys, do not take my word for it. Use this as a framework and try it out and test it, and then see for yourself and what it is. And
the key takeaway from the book is it gives you a structure to understand the system, and the structure is sturdy. It works. Yes, and I ask people to not believe it just because I say so. Investigate it yourselves and study it yourselves. And I've had a lot of people come back now and say, "Yeah, Phil, gosh, now I can see far more clearly." you can see how it pans out.
Yeah.
You really can. And so then that gives you the ability to start to ask yourself, well, where are we now, and what comes next? You know, I think sometimes I have said to people in the past, people who've said, who've read the book and they start reading it again, well, I tell people, for novice people, if you buy the book, it might be worth starting at the back and working backwards. So you start at the last chapter and go. And
I think if you were, so for me, and at the back is actually, so if you start with part 3, the future, that can give you an overview, especially the clock. So if someone took actually a day or two to look at, I mean, it's only a short chapter, but just to have a look and then think about, okay, so this is what I've seen, because what you draw out with the real estate clock is what's consistent with every boom bust cycle that's gone before. Yes. And then you can go back and you can look at and maybe and speed through some of the stuff. And if you're drawn to a certain part of history, or if you know Alexander Hamilton, or if you're from Chicago or the Sooners or whatever, it's like, well, you can look at that particular boom bust cycle or Florida and everything else. But it's just fundamentally the same. It isn't the location. It's just a
behavior.
And how we are. And then you look at the and the appendix of you talk about the Cantillon effect, which I think is that's the thing about the property, isn't it? And the biggest.
Yes. And I put Cantillon in there because he was 1700 and something or other, right? And he was talking about it back then, and he'd seen how credit works, and he'd seen how credit facilitates the cycle getting higher and stronger, and all the stuff that had to do with it. It wasn't just you just got to be able to put it all together, which is what the book is really trying to do, is to help you put it all together so you can see through it, and at the end of the day make profits for yourself from the knowledge.
Well, and also, I mean, I guess it makes profit from the knowledge, but also know when to get the hell out of the water, because there's no safe way of.
Well, we're
playing,
in for a big one now. I've been saying it for a decade, and I'm happily to say it again. I still think it's the case. This one coming's big. It's going to be big, and somehow the cycle seems to have an ability. By the time we get 14 years up, the cycle seems to have an ability to have drawn everybody in some new thing, almost all the time, and it's drawing more and more people in. And Wall Street has an ability to create things that allow us to trade all this stuff and get more and more drawn in, until you get the speculators creating a life for themselves, speculating. And by the time we get to the peak of this current one, nobody will remember the prior one. You're now going to have to be I used to say about 42. People who are 42 and below, by the middle of this decade, I beg your pardon, people who are 42 and below will have no living memory of a cycle.
No professional memory, right?
Yes, that's a better way to put it. No professional memory of a cycle, because let's face it, as students, right? Who remembers? Who remembers stuff? And even students currently today, they'll remember COVID, but not the downturn. They'll just remember having been locked up. The stage has been set now. There's a whole topic again of lockdowns and what might be coming for the. Something else.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because whilst you can get the essence from the third section of the book, the future, which is the shortest part of the book, what you don't get is the repetition, the sheer repetition, and the repeat of never happened before or since, best we've ever had it. And every time people are saying that, and they're getting into it, and so when you hear someone else saying that, or when someone says this, we've never had it so good and it's going to stay good forever, you just know that we're screwed, right? Because you said, you know what, I've actually read Phil's 320 pages of that, and I've read every single one, and it's like, right now, when someone says that, you say, right, let's look for the scams, because that's what in your book, that's what's coming next, is when the politician says, this is it's never good, it's going to be like this forever.
We had a delightful time. We've actually been lucky in this cycle, because we had somebody say it mid-cycle. We had a president stand up in the end of 2009, early 2020, which Jonathan, I said was highly likely. I said that way before it. He stood up and said, we're talking about Mr. Trump, of course, I have delivered for you the greatest economy the US has ever seen. It's the best you've ever had. Yes, that's going to happen again. And, you know, this time it happened. This time we got one mid-cycle. Doesn't always happen like that. But you know, in the heavens, a few people might be. We might know in a few years if he comes back in 2024, he's going to say it again. He is going to say it again. It's absolutely certain if he's in a position to do it, and that's when you know. You know, he's it's just all. It's not hard. It's not hard. It's, you know, it's because that's just representative of the cycle. Because the cycle at the top looks safest. It looks the best. We've all got money. We're all working. We're all creating stuff. What they don't tell you is that half of it's built on credit.
Well, it's got to be more now. I mean, because I just look at, okay, so when we look at the last cycle, one of the things that you learn from reading your book is the chastening or the humility exercise that the bankers go through. That when we joked about in 1793, the bankers say no, or you know, we can regulate ourselves, and that one. But there's some level. There's a few years of repentance. And they're grateful to some extent of being bailed out, and it's like, and they doff their caps to the the government and the citizens who saved them from collapse. Yeah. Whereas in this last one, even in 2008-9, the people who got bailed out were already lording it over everybody else, and they're utterly unrepentant.
Well, not only
and just getting
out
after
some of them, they actually bought the stuff that they bought back at far cheaper prices. The stuff that they'd been bailed out of. It was unbelievable. Nobody said anything, you know. So we don't even have the repentance.
And now we've got the level of borrowing that we're running in this cycle, at this stage of the cycle. That, as far as I'm aware, is unprecedented. In the UK, we've just had a budget, and there is genuine. There's not a magic money tree. There's a magic money tree forest.
Yeah.
Because there must be, to be able to do what they're doing. This socialist conservative government, which is spending money they can't believe they're going to be paying it back. I mean, because there's just so much of it.
Yeah, well, there's a Pandora's box of stuff in there, JB. We should do another session at some point and go through some of this stuff. Perhaps we do it. You know, a lot of stuff I could talk on. You know, I can't get into in public sometimes, and my subscribers know what we talk about, and I give them a great perspective from my stuff, of historical stuff, about how I see things, and the conspiratorial nature of some of these things. We could do that for another topic, perhaps.
Well, and perhaps maybe that's your next book. I'm just thinking about the other way in which. So when you look at the emotions of the market, because that's really what we're talking about this there, wasn't it? Is why people forget when you get so euphoric and you get so into this is amazing, everybody's wealthy, and we're all gonna live forever, and it's like, and what is it that you've done to apply these lessons, the learning that you've shared in the book, so that you then stay at a level of detachment that allows you to see where we are and what's coming next.
It's a funny thing. This is where the works of WD Gann, William Gann, have been so helpful. He shows you how markets turn the opposite way to the emotion. So all the big riveting Yahoo stuff comes out at the top, and that it turns because there's no Yahoo stuff left to come out. This happens on short term, long term, just depends on what sort of time frame we're talking about. And then often when the bad news, the really serious news, hits the front pages, that's when the market turns back up. And then Gann had the unique ability of being able to show that you can line up those tops and bottoms, and if they're higher or lower or whatever direction they're taking, this can tell you what the real professionals are doing with their money. I'd recommend people study Gann in his basic books. Very complementary to what goes on within the real estate cycle. And for example, just to give you one example in a longer term basis, throughout 2010, 2011, 2012, the economic news got persistently worse, but stock markets around the world were making higher lows, which was telling you that we were preparing for another real estate cycle. We were preparing for higher prices, despite the fact that the economic news got worse. And that happens it's quite scientific in an emotional behaviour that happens because stock markets have a unique sense of being able to. They're always looking forward, and the news that you're reading now is already priced into the market months back. And once you get to see some of that stuff, you can start to work your way through it. Through the economy, it doesn't become so confusing. And that's, I tried to bring that out of the book in a longer term sense with emotions in the real estate cycle.
So I guess what you're doing there is you're adding more nuance to the shorter term cycles rather than just the longer term 18, 19 year cycle. Then it's actually, this is and I guess it's, from a investment or trading point of view, you can
it's
look
funny,
at that as well.
Jonathan, I'm probably famous for my real estate book that I've done, but actually, I'm a trader at heart. I actually work harder in stock markets than anything else. And these days, I'm lucky enough to assist in the running of my own fund with a couple of people. So it gives me the chance to start practicing all the stuff I've been preaching. Even though personally I've done well. Now with the fund, it's been useful to start and stuff, and we've been going quite well. Emotions, it's I try to show people and put into practice, and it's just funny how I get known for the real estate stuff when I actually do far more for my subscribers working with stock markets and Gann than real estate.
Is that where you might be going next? And that you might because you were talking in our first conversation around how you came to write the book, and it's like you'd already written a lot of it to your subscribers. It's what you were working on already and helping people to see. But now you're working on trading and investment and WD Gann. Is that your next book then?
Jonathan, I've got 6 or 7 books in my head that need to be written. I hope I get time to. I hope they come out. But the stuff I really want to do is concerned with, which I've mentioned before, I think, abolition of government and citizens' dividend stuff, because I think that's more radical. If I may say, I hope this doesn't sound flippant, but I've been lucky enough, I think, I have to some extent, I've found the answers to, and the answer isn't 42. I've found answers. They may not be your answers, they may not be the listeners' answers, but I found the answers for me, and it's been very taken away all the stress, and I needed to get that understanding. I'm not saying I've been able to live by some of what I've found, but I can see them now, and it just gives you a great perspective. I can see through all the bullshit of politicians, and you can see the bullshit of the real estate cycle, and you can see how it's built on credit and sand. And just when you think it's right at the top and everything's perfect, that's when it'll reveal its other side. And we've just got a system that's built on suckering everybody in. We all get carried away. We live on our emotions. And I think for the young people coming through, it's gotten worse because they're not seeing any great perspective. We're all stuck on our screens, and all you can see is the little stuff. And I hope that they'll start to see the bigger stuff coming through, where they get that perspective and just start to see the wood for the forest, so to speak. If that makes sense for people. So answers the answers. I can't say they're their answers, but they're my answers. So in some sense, I've moved a little bit away from. I'm finished with the real estate cycle. I've moved on in a sense. I want to do stock market stuff and put that more into practice. But what I really want to do is detail for people who want to see it, the total abolition of government, so that people can see that we don't need government. We don't need to have government in a functioning society. Society will function better without government completely. They'll function far better with selected representatives that are not paid to do what they do. They should be part of the local scene and part of the local community, so that the community gets what they want from their selected leaders, shall we say. Perhaps we might not call them leaders, but we'll call them representatives appointed to make proper decisions based on the communal effort. But in fact, if we abolish government and collected the rent and make it a citizen's dividend, the answer, the solutions would become obvious. The problems will solve themselves. It wouldn't need representatives to do that, because people would see the harder they work, the more rent gets created, the more there is to distribute, the wealthier we are, the more that gets created, the more that gets distributed, the wealthier we become even more. It's abundance. That's just what I hope people will. Some people see that when they read the book. They read the chapter about why to repeat, and we talk a little bit about Canberra. It's all there.
Yeah, and so we've got there. So you're doing stuff with your subscribers.
Yes.
On trading and applying the insights that you've got into making money in the markets.
Yes.
What you're also working about is, and the whole thing that I think with the citizen dividend is actually how to have the society that we really ought to have had from the start. Had we not,
people want.
Yeah, had the land not been enclosed and had the well being kept by all of us, then there would have been prosperity for everybody rather than prosperity for a few and poverty for the rest of us.
Yeah, well, for the speculators until we get to the top. Yes, and then we all blame government instead of our own behaviour. And
the subscriber stuff is where?
Property Sharemarket Economics now. Yes, if you just go to propertysharemarketeconomics.com and have a look around, there's plenty of free stuff there. And if you feel so obliged, you're welcome to go behind the scenes and hear from me directly. It's not expensive. I don't charge a lot, but you'll get to see a lot more of the cycle and what I've written currently and recently, and you'll get to meet and share with like-minded individuals, many of whom have gone on to create some serious money. I have myself at times. You'll get to see and connect with and deal with people like that who have come to understand the cycle and see it for what it is, created stuff, and gone on to do great things for themselves. It's been really pleasing for me to see.
Great, and the book's still available. I've heard a rumour that there might be an update.
I hope so. It'll be an e-book update, I think. That's not far away. I've been working on it the past few months. Probably a few subscribers currently might have seen me a bit quiet of late. I've just been trying to put things together, but I need to be a little careful with it because it does. I want it to stand like the book has. So the update will have some specific forecasts in it. I'll be talking a little bit about as we go into 2026 and what I think might happen after that, and perhaps a little bit about how to handle it and things, because I get a few questions like that. So yes, but these things need to be thought about. So I get the perspective, and gosh, we are getting lots of new stuff coming through now too. Plenty to do.
Great. Phil, thanks for your time. It's been great talking.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this mini-series with Phil Anderson, author of The Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking. Now, if you'd like to find out more, be sure to buy the book at Shepheard-Walwyn.com or at all good bookshops, and also be sure to check out his site at www.propertysharemarketeconomics.com. Thanks very much. Thank you for listening to the Shepheard-Walwyn podcast. To explore these ideas further, be sure to visit our website www.shepheard-walwyn.com and join our mailing list for news and special offers. Check out our authors and buy the books to learn more. And you can also find us on social media. Links are also on the website. And if you like the podcast, please head over to iTunes or Spotify to give us a review. It's surprisingly helpful in getting the ideas out there. So until next time, keep reading